when sorry is not enough. Enough said. Call Ed. EdBernstein.com.
It's the Ed Bernstein Show, Home Edition. Now, here's your host, Ed Bernstein.
Hey, welcome to our show today. I have two very prestigious judges on our show today. A little bit later in the show, David Jones, a sitting district court judge, will be here. And currently on our screen is Judge Doug Herndon. And you're running for Supreme Court.
Correct. I'm running for Supreme Court seat D.
Yeah, but you are a sitting, and have been for quite a period of time, district court judge.
Yes. Yeah, I've been on the bench for 15 years now. First, I was an all civil judge for 3 years, and then civil and criminal caseload for about 10 years. And the last, a little short of 3 years, I've been doing all criminal cases, running the homicide team.
Now, in the last few years, our hierarchy of courts has changed somewhat. For years, well, as long as I've been practicing here, and as you as well, we didn't have a court of appeals, and we talked about getting a court of appeals for years. So can you explain the process now to our viewers and discuss, what the role of a Supreme Court justice is as it exists today?
I think a lot of people forget that the Supreme Court has a huge role in the administration of justice throughout the state. It's not just sitting and hearing cases as a justice. They're very intimately involved in the court systems from the bottom up, meaning municipal court, justice court, the district court levels, the court of appeals, and then obviously the administration of their own court as well. There's a multitude of commissions that they're involved in that I've been on with them for many, many years that are designed to help improve access to justice, to improve indigent defense services in the state. They get involved with helping guide rules changes, the civil rules of procedure that were changed last year, jury instructions, trying to do uniform jury instructions throughout the state. And then obviously they oversee the caseload that comes before them, as well as the state appellate court, in kind of a push-down model where everything goes to the Supreme Court originally, and then some of the cases get sent down to the Court of Appeals.
Right. So how does one discern which cases go to the Court of Appeals and which make it up to the Supreme Court?
Well, I think that's what every attorney would like to know, right? You probably prepare cases in different ways depending on who it is that you think is going to be your audience, right? I think traditionally, and by traditionally I mean just since the Court of Appeals was created in 2014, a lot of the more serious civil and criminal cases have remained at the Supreme Court level, and any of the cases that involve decision-making that might set precedent in the state, either civil or criminal or even family court as well. And then a lot of administrative review decisions, DMV, things of that nature will go down to the Court of Appeals. But I have to say, over the last year or so, I've seen a number of more life sentence type criminal cases ending up in the Court of Appeals as well. And I think this is a product of just the enormous appellate caseload that we have.
And I know I've heard for years that we had one of the highest Supreme Court caseloads in the country, and hopefully the Court of Appeals has taken some of that workload away. So, it's important for our courts to work proactively instead of reactively all the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Your history as an attorney, has been excellent. You've worked in district attorney's office for a number of years. You've tried, close to 300 cases as an attorney, and as a judge, dozens and dozens of cases. When you're on the Supreme Court, it's a different job. Are you going to miss the litigation function of what you've done for so many years?
Absolutely. As a judge, I miss doing what you do. right? I mean, I when I became a judge 15 years ago, I knew that being a trial attorney was probably the best job I was ever going to have. I very much enjoyed that. The whole idea of being in the courtroom, litigating cases, being in front of a jury. But I felt a desire to try and broaden my perspective and my involvement. Back when I first became a judge, I felt like I had something to offer from a bigger picture. And so I was very happy to do that. But I never stopped missing that aspect of litigating, even though I feel very comfortable with the idea of not being an advocate and instead being a judge. At the Supreme Court level, you're right. You're completely removed from the jury trial process. It's more about reading and writing. But that's something that I'm really excited about now as well, because we don't just have the highest caseloads almost in the country from the Supreme Court level. We also have it at the district court level, our trial courts. So I don't get a lot of opportunity to make good written decisions on our cases because we're having to work so quickly to move through our calendars. A lot of that falls on the attorneys to propose written orders. And so I look forward to having the opportunity to get more involved in that as well.
In your experience, what's been some of the more challenging parts of being a district court judge, other than the getting up in the elevators at the Justice Center?
Yeah, right. That's a challenge every day. The proactive case management, with the increased caseloads and the increased populations in our county and our state, we haven't really kept up in terms of adding judges. And because of that, when you have these increased caseloads and the need to move more and more what you and I refer to as the morning calendar work, it makes it more difficult to get to the trials. Now, the good offshoot of that is that I think our settlement conference programs have been terrific. We started the civil settlement conference program many years ago. And then last year, Judge Bell and I were able to get a rule change so that we can do settlement conferences in criminal cases now as well. So while that's decreased the number of trials, and I don't ever want to see the jury trial system go away, right? Because it's really critically important, both civilly and criminally, to have the community involved in settling issues. But it's been a challenge trying to get cases kind of to resolution in a reasonable amount of time.
I mean, it's double the challenge, I guess, right now with COVID-19.
Sure. Yeah, we haven't done any jury trials since mid-March. I'm on a committee right now trying to figure out how we might be able to start them up again. We're targeting the very end of July. And that would be with in-custody criminal cases where people have invoked their right to speedy trial. So with regard to civil cases, that's probably a little later in the fall or maybe even 2021 when we're looking at that. I had some conversations recently with a gentleman that I'm sure you know, Matt Sharp, who's a personal injury attorney up in Reno, who's on a similar committee up there focused solely on civil cases. And you all get the benefit of letting the criminal trial process start up first and kind of watching and learning and seeing what our challenges are, to be quite honest. The biggest challenge is going to have people having any type of comfort level coming into the building to be jurors. We're trying to figure that out first before we actually start setting trials.
Yeah, you want to keep everybody safe for sure.
Sure.
You know, when you're running for a position like the Supreme Court, or actually for any judgeship, you have rules governing what you can talk about, what you can say, what questions you can respond to, because a case may eventually come before you, and you don't want to have any preconception of a viewpoint on those cases. So, can you explain how do you run for Supreme Court? I mean, you really can't talk about your preference on so many topics. So right. When you're going out and about, and what is it that they are asking you about in reference to a Supreme Court position, and what is it that you do like to tell them?
Well, the fact that we cannot comment on most things does not prohibit people from asking. So, particularly this year, since I'm running statewide, everywhere from northern Nevada down to Laughlin, I get questions all the time that are very specific to legal issues and cases and things that are going on. And I have to explain to people the judicial canons that prohibit us from commenting on those types of things. And I kind of explain to them that A judge it's not just that a judge cannot be an activist in the courtroom. A judge cannot be an activist outside the courtroom either. We are judges under the rules 24/7. And so even though we're individuals and we have opinions on things, it's inappropriate for us to kind of go off and express philosophies and opinions about those things that can come before the court in any type of fashion. I rely greatly, quite honestly, Ed, on people like yourself, attorneys. You all have so much more influence than you maybe realize when people ask you about judges and who to vote for and things like that. So I've always said I'll trust whatever anybody that appears in front of me has to say about me, because I hope that I've treated people respectfully, both as attorneys and as jurors. There are a lot of groups that have kind of popped up on the internet as well that offer information about our appellate statistics, whether we get reversed a lot or not. I do pretty well there, so that's nice. The Las Vegas Review-Journal surveys that you all get to partake in as attorneys, I do pretty well there, so I always cite to those as well. But you're just looking for any ability of people to kind of take a temperature of what you've done as a judge, since you can't really answer questions directly about it.
Yeah. The other large difference between when I was talking earlier about you being a litigator and a trial lawyer and then changing, becoming a judge, we talked about the differences, but there's also a difference in the Supreme Court. Right now, a case comes in front of you and you make a decision, and that decision stands. You do it by yourself. It's a one-person decision.
Right.
You get in front when you become a member of the Supreme Court. You have other opinions, and that I don't know. I mean, sometimes there's some persuasion going on among the judges, some mediation, negotiation. I don't know.
Right.
But it is a difference in how you effectuate a decision, right?
Absolutely. And one of the things, even though as a individual district court judge, we are responsible for our own decisions and are autonomous in making those decisions, one of the things I've always believed since I started 15 years ago is that you do things for the betterment of the entire court. So you shouldn't be out there kind of doing the lone wolf thing to the detriment of the rest of the bench and the court system. I mean, people need to rely on some consistency amongst all of us. So I've always tried to be very collaborative in working with other judges on issues. And I think that that's kind of what translates over to the Supreme Court. Each and every case that comes before you, you're collaborating with the other justices, central attorneys, staff with the Supreme Court, coming up with everything from the decision to the language you use. As you know, those semantics can be really critically important in the written decision. And all of that is stuff that people collaborate on. You're not always going to have unanimity in the decision making, but that's okay. I think that I probably wouldn't have run for the Supreme Court if it wasn't currently a group of people that I respect and think that I have good relationships with all of them, and it would be a great place to be able to work and contribute to.
Yeah, oftentimes when people talk about the United States Supreme Court, we all know judges with political leanings on each. And one of the reasons being that you get appointed by by a president, or you get nominated by a president, and they normally nominate people of their own party that have certain political leanings. That's not true at all in the Nevada Supreme Court, is it?
Right. Yeah, I think that the court's been very good about keeping politics out of it. You'll remember the days 20, 25 years ago, and there was a lot going on at the Supreme Court level, a lot of infighting, a lot of politics, not so much from a Democrat-Republican kind of standpoint, but just political stuff going on. And I think the court's done a very good job of cleaning that up over the years. So that they do their business in a very respectful way. They obviously have different philosophies and opinions on issues, but it doesn't come down to political leanings when decisions are rendered.
So we have a few minutes left. Can you just talk about yourself to our viewers, about your background, how long you've been in Las Vegas, and what's important to you?
So I grew up in Texas. My wife and I met in college. We both went to Texas A&M University, so we've been together a little over 34 years now. And then I went to law school in Virginia. I was a year ahead of her. And so Carrie moved out to D.C. and worked for her congressman while I finished up law school. And then we came out to Nevada 30 years ago. And quite honestly, when we came out here, Ed, the plan was maybe stay here. I took a clerkship, maybe stay here for a short bit, and eventually probably end up back in Texas where we grew up and we had family. But I very immediately kind of fell in love with this community because it was very welcoming, and everybody kind of made me feel immediately like, if I'm willing to work hard, I'm going to get opportunities to succeed. And so we kind of decided to put our roots down and stay here. And then after a couple of years in the district attorney's office where I was working, that feeling had continued to grow. So I decided at that time that I was going to stay there and kind of be involved in public service. So I spent 14 years in the district attorney's office where I ran the special victims unit. And then I got appointed by Governor Gwynn in 2005 to my current position as a district court judge. So I've been on the bench for 15 years now. I've been a chief judge for 11 years. I currently run the homicide case team. And I just kind of felt like that, I feel like I've done everything I wanted to do as a district court judge. And I have all this mentorship that I've gained over the years from judges and attorneys that gives me something that I think I could offer from a broader perspective to the people of the state. And I look forward to having that opportunity to serve on the Supreme Court. Carrie and I have two daughters that are, my oldest just virtually graduated from college, right? Had her last semester interrupted, like many of us in many ways. And then my youngest daughter, Emily Grace, just finished her first year in college, and we're kind of waiting to see what happens next year for both of them. My oldest is supposed to be starting a screenwriting fellowship at the American Film Institute, and then Emily's going back to school at Bowdoin in Maine.
Oh, yeah, I'm in the same boat. We just did a virtual graduation. One of my daughters just graduated University of Chicago Law School, and we did a virtual graduation. I really feel bad for the kids that just didn't really participate in their graduation. It's a big event, and there's a lot of loss in so many immeasurable ways from this virus. Judge Doug Herndon. I make sure I don't get that D in there, right?
Herndon is good.
I catch myself missing the D. Well, good luck in your the Supreme Court race.
Thank you.
We're going to try to maybe we can have you back on before the election, so as the election gets a little bit closer.
Sure.
And hopefully maybe we'll be out there without masks sometime before the election, so we can really shake hands.
Hope, right? One can hope. All right. Yeah. Perfect.
Okay. Thank you so much, Judge Herndon.
I grew up watching him on TV.
He helped me with my case.
He helped me with my case.
He's always helping our community.
They've got one of the largest jury verdicts in Nevada. I trust him.
I trust him.
I trust him.
Enough said. Call Ed.
With me now is District Court Judge David Jones. Judge, how are you?
Great. How you doing, Ed?
I'm doing great. I know you grew up, born in Las Vegas, and you went to Valley High School.
I did.
Yeah, I've been to Valley multiple times over the years.
Yeah, it changes. In fact, unfortunately, Ted Phillips, who was one of our deans, just recently passed away, and we had a kind of a get-together for him by Zoom because, of course, we couldn't attend his funeral. And the last time I saw him was the day that Clarence Piggott was shot, unfortunately, at Valley High School.
Wow. Anyway, you have quite a breadth of experience. I know that for years you worked kind of doing the same kind of work that I do, personal injury work, and then you did some defense work for large law firms, and then you got on the bench. What was that? How many? 4 or 6 years ago?
Just going on 4 years here now.
Yeah, and. So tell me, what is a transition like going from private practice to being a judge?
What's incredibly hard, it's probably the hardest part about doing it, of course, because this was the third governor who asked me to basically be on the bench, and the political part of it's by far the hardest. It's very hard to stay apolitical in the position where you have to. The other part is individuals like yourself that I've known for 30 plus years that I consider a friend, you kind of have to distance yourself from long-term relationships that you have with individuals that are in the practice. And that's for a person who was born and raised here, and I know basically every person who's practiced probably more than 15 years in Clark County, you have to kind of distance yourself from those relationships. And that's kind of hard because you build up some great relationships with people over the years.
Yeah, and I think, the private attorneys, it's still in so many ways still a small town, and most of us who've been here for a long time know basically all the judges, and I think that we all understand that judges make the decisions for and against us, and as long as the judges reads the documents, which is important, I think, to attorneys, and you deal with the litigants with respect. I think all the lawyers understand that.
Yeah, that's by far, that is always the hardest part for a lot of individuals who have practiced a great time in Las Vegas is you kind of have to distance yourself from those relationships, and you hate to do that because, I was on probably a dozen plus boards, charitable organizations, and you have to resign from those positions, which is very tough to do when you have such a huge interest in Clark County.
Yeah. You have what's known as a split calendar, correct?
Split docket.
So that means you handle criminal cases as well as civil cases.
Absolutely. My docket's almost 50-50.
So is that a good system? Are you an advocate of the split system, or do you think judges should specialize in one or the other?
I think we're finding out that specialization, because we've become such a large community, that specialization is probably more advantageous. I mean, you and I go back to the time period when Judge Mendoza would do a divorce in the middle of the day, and 15 minutes later you were doing a criminal matter, and then he would interrupt it because someone would say, "Hey, Judge, we settled the civil case. Can we put it on the docket?" And you do, literally from family court all the way to murder trials in the same week. You could do that when there was 8 to 10 judges and the population was 300,000 people. You get close to 3 million people. I think we're finding that judges are going to have to specialize because the area of law has become so complex. It's tough for a judge to be able to maintain his or her ability across the board. I mean, I'll do a wrongful death medical malpractice, and the very next day I'm doing an armed robbery case. And the law is quite different between those two topics. So I think you're going to see more and more specializations.
Right. Now, coming into the job, I would think that you had a greater expertise in the civil component than you did in the criminal.
I did. I spent probably about, when they asked me to, I was originally, of course, just a civil docket, and then the chief judge asked me to take over a criminal docket and keep my civil docket. So I called up a lot of old law professors, a lot of friends that practice in the criminal arena, and I spent about 3 months going back to law school and learning the criminal arena, which I had not experienced, except for the fact that, of course, I represented a lot of the corporate and the police department. So I have the criminal background, but it had been a long time since I had to deal with the practice portion of it.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to have these TV shows with judicial candidates because it's been very difficult to get to get out to the public and get their attention, particularly if what's going on at the national elections and the virus and everything else. So what do you believe is important for voters to know when selecting a judicial candidate?
The most important thing that I think is understanding that judge's background and that judge's understanding of the law. Unfortunately, so many people are uneducated in the judicial elections that it becomes either a name contest or, unfortunately, who spends the most money to get their name known. And people will ask you, I mean, I'm sure you've had this, like every lawyer in Las Vegas, the day or two before the election, you get 150 phone calls. Hey, Ed, hey, Dave, who should I vote for? Because the people of Clark County, unfortunately, don't have the ability to become educated on the judicial races. Most people would try desperately to, they'll say, Dave, I love you as an individual. I just never want to see you professionally. And I understand that. But it's important for people to understand those individuals who have a lifelong commitment to the law. I've been doing it almost 30 years now. And those who basically have what I consider a much more important thing, a love for Nevada.
It's very difficult for the average voter to really discern the quality or competence of a particularly a district court judge. Now, the Review Journal, in connection with, I guess, with some other organization, does polling. Has that been helpful, and how did you do?
It's been helpful. I think I was either number 1 or number 2 of the highest ranked split docket judges. I was in the high 80 percentile, 85 to 87%, which means lawyers who I had just ruled against, even because in every contest, one's going to win, one's going to lose. Even those individuals who I ruled against still considered me 85 to 87% of the time the best qualified judge, which I took it to heart. It meant a lot to me. Actually, I was a little bit upset that I wasn't over in the 90s.
How are you dealing with the COVID-19 over at the courthouse?
It's been an unbelievable rough experience. Dealing with the biggest problem is dealing in the criminal arena. You have individuals that are being held in facilities such as CCDC or the prisons, and you may have a small outbreak. We've had to change our entire system. In the middle of it, we had a flood. The 15th floor flooded out. My courtroom, my chambers completely flooded out. So I was the mobile judge. I was basically judge in a box. I would have my box and we would go around from courtroom to courtroom. Dealing with the COVID has been a bunch of issues. Biggest concern is the jury trials. We're going to try to start to get jury trials back. It's going to be extremely difficult. Chief Judge Bell has done an outstanding job in orchestrating it. We just need the confidence of the people in Clark County to understand that they're going to have to do their role and come back and be part of the system, the court system.
So one way is to, get information. If you know an attorney, talk to an attorney you may know about what judges they appear in front of and what their opinions are. That's a great idea. But it's, you have to run county wide, and you're competing with congressional races and county commission races and the presidential election. So I guess a lot of it is a lot of grassroots emails and mail, snail mail, and just shaking hands, right? It's
been absolutely. Before the, of course, virus outbreak, it was a lot of evening events. I don't think there was a single, probably maybe out of the 6 to 8 months before when the campaign was really starting, I think maybe I ate at home once in those 6 months. It's a lot of that. And it's more importantly is I tell people all the time, it's your courtroom. My placard on the bench slides in and slides out. The courtroom doesn't belong to Judge David Jones. It belongs to the taxpayers of the state of Nevada, and more importantly, Clark County. Come to the court. Join the Trial by Peers program. Be a part of the CASA program. Do whatever you can to be part of the judicial system. Come watch a trial. I can guarantee it's not Judge Judy, but it's probably something that would probably be the most educational thing you've ever seen. I've had people come in off the street and watch a trial and tell me afterwards that they were unbelievably amazed at that's how the system actually works.
Yeah. Well, that was very well said. So thank you so much, District Court Judge David Jones, and good luck. You've been in this town a long time. You've done a great job, and good luck with the election.
Thanks, Ed.
When sorry is not enough. Enough said. Call Ed. EdBernstein.com.